Hello, my amazing children. This is Grandma Carla, and I am back with Missionary Stories with the Millers. And today we are reading chapter 22, Day of Disaster. And this is happening in Alaska, which you can see is way up here. And here's where I live, down here in the United States, and this is Alaska, which is part of the United States, but it's separated from it, and that's where this story takes place. Day of Disaster. On March 27, 1964, a mighty earthquake struck Alaska. Sliding rock layers underground made the land shake like a dog shakes a rat. Mountains quivered and split apart. Highways and sidewalks rippled in waves of concrete. Buildings in the city of Anchorage dropped as much as 30 feet down when the ground beneath them simply fell away. When the dust cleared, remembers a lady from Kansas who was visiting Alaska that day, we looked out at the apartment house next door and could not believe our eyes. Between that building and ours, there was an enormous crack in the earth, 20 feet wide. A man was standing in his open door, looking straight down into the hole where his porch had been. But more disaster was coming. Out in the ocean depths, where the earthquakes had disturbed the waters, giant waves formed and rushed toward the land. Soon a wall of water 30 feet high came thundering up the channel into the Gulf of Alaska to hit the islands and tiny fishing villages. Fisherman John Larson was out in his little boat, not far from the island of Fognak, when he saw the wave approaching. "I see something coming, something big. This is a big one," he shouted urgently into his radio. Then his transmitter was silenced forever as the huge wave overtook his boat. Most of the Indians on Fognak Island received his warning just in time to save their lives by escaping to higher ground. But out of 38 homes on the island, 23 were shattered and washed away by the wave. 10 days later, Noah Miller, a carpenter from Canada, sat in church listening as his minister made an announcement. "The Mennonite Disaster Service is asking for volunteers," said the minister, "to help rebuild a small Indian village in the flooded area of Alaska. Over 4,000 people have lost their homes because of the earthquake and the flood in Alaska." Noah shivered slightly, thinking of all those people who had escaped with their lives only to see their homes lie in ruins. Where would all those poor men, women, and children sleep at night? Alaska was a cold place. "I believe I'll go," Noah thought. "And maybe I'll have an opportunity to tell some of those Indians about Jesus, too." The Mennonite Disaster Service leaders had flown to Alaska after the quake to see where their men could help. They learned that people in big cities like Anchorage were getting plenty of aid from the government and other organizations. But who would help the homeless Indians in poor villages like Fognak? "We will bring carpenters, plumbers, and electricians to help rebuild the village," the men decided. Soon, Noah Miller and 39 other volunteers from churches in the United States and Canada were on their way to Alaska. They brought their tools, and they came to build. First, the land had to be cleared of fallen trees and broken parts of houses and boats. The floodwaters had lifted heavy fishing boats and crab boats like empty peanut shells, flinging them over the harbor and up onto the land. Next, the men dug holes for pilings, set the floor joust, and the houses began to grow. Sawdust flew through the air as saws whined and hammers banged briskly. The Mennonite volunteers often sang or whistled as they worked, and soon the shy Indian children crowded around to watch these friendly strangers. "My name is Noah," Noah Miller told an Indian boy when he came down from the roof for more nails. "What's your name?" "Noah?" the boy repeated, and a gleam of mischief came into his eyes. "Are you the same Noah who built the ark in that other flood? A preacher came here once and told us about him." "No, I am not that same Noah," the carpenter chuckled. "I'm just a relative of his. But God, who kept Noah safe in the ark, is the same God who has kept you safe through this flood in Afognak." Besides working on new homes for the Indians, the Christian carpenters built a small church house with a pulpit and a table for communion. In the evenings after work, they gathered together for services there. "We have come to help you in the name of Christ," they told the people in Afognak. "We would like to tell you more about him, too." Before Noah knew it, his 6 weeks of work on Afognak Island were over. 7 of the new houses were completely done, and the others could be finished by the Indians themselves. Noah had another project, too, that was not quite finished. He had made friends with one of the men of Afognak and spoken to him about his soul. The Indian had shown interest in Noah's gospel message, but still had not made his decision for Christ. "How can I witness to him one more time, Lord?" Noah prayed. "Please give me a chance to speak with him alone before we leave." It was not long before Noah's prayer was answered. "Mr. Noah, I would like to take you for a ride in my boat tomorrow before you leave," his Indian friend invited. "We can go see one of the little islands and catch a few fish. Would you like to do that?" "Sure," Noah accepted happily. "This must be the Lord's answer to my prayer," he thought. The next morning was clear and sunny. The small motorboat churned up a wake of white water through the blue waves. "What a beautiful day," Noah exclaimed. 7 miles from Afognak, a small island loomed ahead. "There's the place we're heading for," the Indian told Noah. "Soon we will," but stopped abruptly. The motor on the boat was sputtering. It gave one final cough and died. Calmly, the Indian checked different parts of the motor, then turned to Noah. "I can't fix it," he apologized. "We'd better start rowing to the island. Look, a fog is coming in." It was true. Noah's heart sank as he looked at the disappearing sky, then at the small, faraway island. Could they row that far before the fog covered them completely? And how would they ever be rescued from the island? Frantically, the men worked at their oars. Their only hope was to reach the island while they could still see it. Grimly, the thick fog rolled closer and closer across the water. At last, the men made their way through the shallow waves and drew the boat up on the little beach. "Now what do we do?" Noah asked. "Now we wait," the Indian replied. "Someone will come by with a boat, or the fog will lift if we wait long enough." Several hours passed, and still there was no sign of rescue. The men grew hungry, so the Indian scouted along the beach until he found a nest of penguin eggs. Kindling a small fire, he roasted the eggs in its ashes. "You know," he said to Noah as they ate their strange meal, "you aren't like a lot of white men. Most white men would get all upset about being stranded like this and having their plans turned upside down." Here was the chance Noah had been waiting for. "Being a Christian gives a man peace," he told his friend earnestly. "We don't need to be fearful or upset because we know that God is in control of everything. Even if we die, we will be safe in heaven. God will give you this faith too if you ask him. Would you like to do that?" "Yes, I would," the Indian said huskily. "Will you pray with me?" What a thrill of joy filled Noah's heart as the two men knelt on that rocky shore in Alaska. Just as they arose from their knees, the roar of a motorboat sounded faintly in the distance. "I must make a signal fire so they will know where to find us," the new Christian Indian stated. Taking his can of gasoline, he poured some onto the beach and set a match to it. With a whoosh, orange flames leaped high in the air. Out in the fog, the sound of a motor changed direction as the boat turned toward their fire. God was in control of everything, Noah thought gladly. This makes Grandma Carla cry just a little bit. Our God is a great God. He allowed the boat to break down for a reason, and now he sends rescue at just the right moment. God can bring souls to salvation even through disaster. So here's the historical note. The Mennonite Disaster Service is an organization that provides, let me turn the page here, Christian volunteers to work wherever they are needed. When any natural disaster such as flood, hurricane, earthquake, or tornado strikes in the United States or overseas, MDS is ready to go. The motto of MDS is the scripture verse, "Bear ye one another's burdens and so fulfill the law of Christ." Each volunteer worker wears a blue and white badge showing two clasped hands beneath a cross. No one but God knows how many thousands of men and women have volunteered, like Noah Miller in the story, to work with Mennonite Disaster Service. Before the volunteers left Afognak Island, the chief of the Indian village there made an announcement. "This stream, which flows past our new village, shall be called Mennonite Creek," he said, and Mennonite Creek, it is still named to this day. Wasn't that a very cool story? God can save even in disaster, and he did. And this is Grandma Carla, and I love you.